Okay, hi. My name's Alexandra Gallegos,
I'm Audrey Thompson.
and today we are going over strategy 7 and 29. Oh, sorry, that was me. So strategy 7 is collecting and processing words. The strategy definition is basically what the strategy does is it helps children develop better speaking and writing vocabularies, or even not just vocabulary words, but it could be targeted words, it could be phonics words that we go through with them, or even high frequency words. Um, this will also help children understand words that have same or similar meanings. So it can definitely be a plus when we're going over our phonics words or our high frequency words, because some of those words might have similar meanings or even meanings that they might not understand. So this could definitely help with that. Another thing is that by building these words and helping them process and collect them, students are building a repertoire of words and their word meanings. So several approaches to collecting and processing words is that one, we can expose them to vocabulary readings. I don't know if you're aware, but there is a program called HMH. I use that in my classroom, and it has lesson plans and modules. But basically, with every module, we get a reading or a lesson plan. We have a reading. For instance, in the activity that we'll do in the future during this presentation, Sam and Dave dig a cave or whatever. What happens is they obviously throughout the story you want to be able to expose them to the vocabulary in those readings. So that's very important. The second thing is that you use explicit instruction of targeted words. Again, this goes with exposing them to that. And the explicit instruction is basically just making sure that their brain and their mind is moving and understanding, like, oh, what does this word mean? Or how can I apply it to real life? And the third approach is learning words through stories. Again, this goes with step 1 and 2. When we are reading the stories, it's important that we are giving them questions that are going to get their brain moving and get their mind wandering. Sometimes I'll ask them, like, what do you notice about this picture? Or what do you wonder about this picture? Now, the picture is similar to the story, the picture goes with the story. But what happens is when we get them to wonder and notice, they start to understand, and this can get them to start to process and collect those future words that we're going through in that story. And the fourth one is moving from low demand to high demand questions. And like I said, this goes with the approach number 3, where it's learning words through stories. As you're reading a story, you want to ask those low demand and high demand questions. An example of low demand could be that, what do you notice or what do you wonder? And a high demand question could be like, okay, so Sam is on a mission. What do you think will happen at the end of the story with Dave? Those are a little bit high demand because now you're asking them to process and now you're asking them to think about the future. And the last approach is vocabulary should include teacher and student led activities that are interactive and target those new words. You don't ever want to just have it be teacher led, because then the students are not, they're not getting that interactive part. You want to make sure that there's a balance. Some examples, this is an example that I use in my classroom, and it's we create these charts to target new words and stories that could help categorize words and give student that extra support that they need, right? We want to make sure that support is helping them process and collect the words, and like I said, those words could be vocabulary, high frequency, or even their phonics words. And then really quick, we're just going to go over a step-by-step process. Some of these I am familiar with, some of these I don't use in my classroom. But after reading this, I was like, well, maybe I could try this. It doesn't hurt to try it. But the first one is identifying unfamiliar words in reading selections. When I read a story, I tend to always ask first before we go into that passage, do you know this word? And if they don't, then I have them think about it, and then we will create like kind of a chart, and we collect those words. The second one is we write an unfamiliar word on charts to explore meanings, which is what I just explained. I have my kids grab a chart and we write down those words so that we can explore those meanings. The third one is I have student act out the words. I do this in my classroom because I think it's an effective way and it's an interactive activity. Because it's very common for us to just write a sentence, draw a picture. Is it a synonym or antonym? I to do that as a child, and as much as I did like it, it just didn't get me moving. And this is like what I wanted for my children. I wanted them to start moving and start to think, because if they take a test and they don't know the word, they could just act it out and they'll instantly remember it. Introduce synonyms and add to the collection chart. Provide students with a vocab journal, and assess to determine the need for further instruction. And really quick, this is an activity that we just did in Module 1, and it was Sam and Dave dig a hole. And so what happens is I'll print this chart out, and we will write down our vocab words. And depending on who said it, I'll say, okay, Sam said we were on a mission. I will then tell my students, okay, students, how would we act out if Sam was on a mission? That's our vocab word, mission, right? So how would we act it out? So then they would act it out. Now, depending on the words, whoever said it, that's, I want to first and foremost have them identify who said it, because one, it helps with their context of the story, but then acting it out helps them understand and process that word. And that's it.
And then for strategy 29, it's language focused lessons. It's supporting English vocabulary and language acquisition. And then a definition of the strategy. Language focused lessons focuses more on the English vocabulary being used rather than the content itself. The lessons may explore content like math, science, and social studies, but emphasize the English vocabulary being used. Teachers should select vocabulary words based on observing what students are struggling with. Examples of this could be stating comparisons, presenting opinions, or summarizing information. This strategy allows English language learners to learn English more rapidly. This strategy also allows for higher levels of proficiency. And then a step-by-step. Teachers should first observe their students and record what type of language they regularly misuse. But it could also be, for example, if they were like doing an experiment, the words themselves could be experiment, lab, procedure, and then they go over those words in an experiment. And step 2, gather the materials to teach the language usage. This include visual, charts, and hands-on activities. One of those activities could just be like doing the lab itself, for example, that's hands-on. And then for number 3, teach the vocabulary to the student by modeling its usage with several examples. So like examples using those words in real life and in literature. Step 4, the student should complete an activity that models the usage of the language. This may include movement. Step 5, students should complete an activity that allows the teacher to observe how the students are doing. This could be in a worksheet or a class discussion or a group discussion, but it basically gives the teacher time to walk around and see if they're picking up on the terms. And number 6, the teacher should record or they should have a record or a checklist to keep track of how the students are progressing and what terms they're understanding. Some examples of this would be, for example, in math, students may be learning comparison words. They may be really struggling with like larger than, bigger than, smaller than, equal to. And a hands-on activity the teacher could do is the teacher could have different objects and she could show the objects to like right next to each other. And then they could have a classroom discussion using those terms to compare those objects. And then hopefully the students would see it in like real life and be able to understand those terms better. The degrees of obligation terms could be discussed when going over classroom procedures or instructions for a lab. For example, like do not start the lab without being asked, or you must turn in your homework on time. And then position words and preposition phrases may be discussed when reading a literature that shows position. Or you could have, again, 2 objects and be like, the apple is on my desk, or the pencil is next to my pen. And then I'm going to model an activity time that would be using this strategy. So I would say, good morning, class. Today we'll be going over our classroom rules and expectations. We are going to be talking about some of the vocab used in the class rules. These rules include might, may, should, could, and can, and those are those terms of obligation. So class, our classroom rules are going to be, you must treat your classmates and teacher with respect. You should raise your hand when you want to speak. You may get drinks as needed, and you can grab materials in the back when needed. So in that lesson, I just talked about some of those terms, and then I'm then going to have the students complete a more hands-on activity. It'd be a requirement line activity. So I would just draw a straight line on the board, and they're going to put those terms based on like the strength of the words. So I would say, where would must go? And a student would say, must is the strongest, like you have to do something, so it'd be at the end. And then I would say, okay, if must goes there, then where should go? And a student would likely say, well, must isn't as strong as should, but it's still implying that you need to do that. So it would go in the middle. And then I would ask about words like, what about may, can, could, or might? Those words are not as forceful, and I would put them at the end, and then I would show my students that. And in the chalkboard activity or the board activity, I would also ask the students, what are some examples of you seeing these words in real life? And someone would say, a student would likely say, um, my dad must stop at the stop sign. And I would say, yeah, that's right. But why must your dad stop at the stop sign? And then I would talk about how that's a law and we have to obey the laws. And another example would be a kid could say, my mom told me I must clean my room. And so I was like, yeah, you have to clean your room. Or if I gave extra homework to the kids, I could say, you should do the extra credit assignment, but it's not like they have to, but they should do it. And then next I would move on to an independent practice. And this is also for the teachers to be able to walk and observe and see how the students are doing, see if they're mastering the words. And this is a little worksheet. It says, I blank go to the movies. And they could put, I might go to the movies. I can go to the movies. I blank have some candy. I should have some candy. I blank I blank do that. I can do that. I blank pick up the trash. I should pick up the trash. So I would just see like where they're putting these words and if they're understanding. And I'd probably be walking around for about 5 or 10 minutes, seeing if anybody had questions. And then for my own personal data as a teacher, I would have the vocab words and I would have some notes on whether or not they're understanding. And then I could use this as a checklist to like move on or to do another lesson that goes over this, maybe more in depth, or just to kind of repeat the same lesson. And then I can just have a record for all the students to see what they're at and see who needs help. It's also good to see who needs to break into small groups. And that would be the end of the lesson.
Audrey, I have a question.
Yeah.
So do you think the record data that you could use it also like formal data, like so that you can master whether or not they understood the assignment?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's important for like all teachers to just be keeping track about how their kids are doing.
Okay, cool.
And there's some resources, and that's all. Thank you.